Welcome to the eShopper Reviews Podcast, episode 26. This is the podcast for May 2023. I'm Jenn Ip.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
For those new to the subreddit or to this podcast, eShopper Reviews is a subreddit on reddit.com where Jake reviews games on the Nintendo Switch platform, and you can find this subreddit at the URL reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. We currently have over 2,200 reviews and counting, and we are supported by your donations on our Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. This month's sponsors are Ben, Andy Miller, Xleen, Homer Simpin, Johannes, Talisa, Eli Goodman, Gabriel Coronado Medina, Ilya Zarev, Christopher Wolf, and Seth Christianfeld. Thank you all for helping to keep the reviews coming. Now on to the patron-voted games. Starting with our standard vote, which is a tie between Little Gator Game.
Lil Gator Game.
Little.
No, there's no T. It's Lil.
Lil Gator Game. And Melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
And our all-patron budget vote, excuse me if I mispronounce this because there's an accent, Row.
Lil Gator Game and Melatonin tied, which means that I get to be the tiebreaker vote. I'll choose one of these two to review. There have been times when I've just gone ahead and reviewed both, but I make no promises as to that. I know nothing about either of these games other than supposedly they're both pretty good. And I also know nothing about Row. Interestingly enough, there were multiple voters in the budget vote this month. We had a decent turnout, I suppose. And the vote was unanimous. Apparently everyone is really curious about Row. So I guess I'm going to be playing some Row, whatever Row is.
All right, so for next month's vote, which includes acclaimed 2023 games with a Metacritic score of 80 or higher that Jake missed in prior votes, keep in mind he will review the top two picks.
Yeah, this I'm doing something a bit special for this month because all of the games in this list that Jen is about to read are kind of less expensive games. There's a lot of indie stuff here, and there's nothing that's really a full price game. And generally for the full patron vote, I do like to give people their money's worth, so to speak. So rather than just reviewing one of these less expensive games, I'll go ahead and review whichever two get the most votes. And I'll make it so that people can vote multiple times so that you can pick the games that are most interesting for you. These are all games that have been released in the first part of 2023. I have not had any of these in prior votes, and they're all supposed to be pretty good. So I don't think there's any wrong options here, or at least so I am to understand.
We have A Space for the Unbound, Breaker's Collection, Coffee Talk, Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterfly, Drainus, Dredge, Fashion Police Squad, Ib, Never Awake, Paranormal Site, The Seven Mysteries of Hanzhou, Power Wash Simulator, Rakuen Deluxe Edition, Ritmos, The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow, The Mage Seeker, A League of Legends Story.
Okay, so I don't know much about most of these. I did review the original Coffee Talk, so...
I did play Power Wash Simulator.
Oh, you have? On the PC, I'm sure.
On the PC. It is not for me. However, I got it at the recommendation of several friends who were in a voice chat call with me, and they loved it. They found it extremely satisfying. It did not do anything for me.
I've heard good things about A Space for the Unbound, but I don't really know what it's about. I've heard good things about Dredge, and this one came out fairly recently, and I've heard really good things about it.
I've heard good things on that as well, and I also have it on my wish list.
It's like a fishing game with horror elements.
Lovecraftian elements, yeah. I think.
Let's see. And beyond that, I don't know that I've heard much about any of the remainder. Mage Seeker, League of Legends Story. I don't know anything about it, but I know that a lot of the League of Legends spin-offs have been pretty good. I'm not trying to direct anyone's vote here. Just whichever of these games strike your fancy. If you are a Patreon patron who submits, or who has donated rather, $5 or more to the Patreon this month, you get your pick of, vote for whichever of these sound interesting to you.
All right, on to the all-patron budget game vote with even more early 2023 budget games. We have Finger Football Goal in One. I'm going to mess up this pronunciation. Jarreteer RPG.
That sounded right to me.
Okay. My Name is Mayo. Non-Stop Space Probe. Radiant Flux Hyperfractal 4.0. And Tuya.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, all these games, their titles aren't like ridiculously long.
I really wanted to avoid that because I know I've had a lot of those in recent months, and it's like, okay, let's try and get away from the super long titles that are probably, let's be honest, not the greatest games.
Probably not.
I mean, I don't mean to prejudge, but let me tell you, you people voted for one of those games to be this last month's budget vote game, and let me tell you, it weren't great. We'll get to that in a bit.
Okay. All right, so we'll talk about the highlights that eShopper Reviews covered in the month of April 2023. As always, these are not necessarily games released in the last month, but games that Jake reviewed. So we'll start by talking about, you know what? The worst game.
Ooh, okay.
Awakening of Cthulhu.
Starting with the worst of the worst.
Why not?
Okay. I do tend to have these in order, and...
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've even listed the grades that I gave them there for your reference.
Okay, so you gave Awakening of Cthulhu a D-.
Awakening of Cthulhu is an action platformer. I did review a few different kind of Cthulhu-themed games this month, and this was the worst of the bunch. Right off the bat, you start with an absolutely boring, tedious, repetitive action platformer with really clunky, slow controls. It's a game where you're only doing combat, and the combat is just so bad. It's like, if you are going to make a game where combat was the focus, at least make the combat good. If you can't make the combat good, maybe don't make that the focus of your game. But that's not even the worst part of this. There is something very bizarre going on with the graphics in this game, and you could possibly put it down to it being a Cthulhu-themed game where they're trying to do something quirky and messy with the graphics, but I don't want to give them that credit because I don't think that's what's going on here. When the graphics first load, everything is super pixelated, and then it gradually takes a moment for it to become normal again.
Ooh.
But you're starting the level even before everything is loaded properly, and it means that for the first few seconds of each level, you are literally fighting these pixel monsters. It's Attack of the Pixel Monsters. And then eventually they resolve, and I mean, they don't look fantastic, but at least they look like someone put some effort into them rather than just doing a random mesh of pixels on the screen. It's an embarrassment. It looks bad. It plays bad. There is nothing about this that I feel like I can recommend to people. Even if you're into a Cthulhu theme, you have so many better options on Nintendo Switch.
I would agree. All right, so the next one is Ducky Quacky, which also got a D-.
Ducky Quacky was not broken in the same way that Awakening of Cthulhu was, but still not great. So this is a 3D platformer. It's, cartoony and kind of family friendly, but it feels very incomplete. And it's like there's no music throughout the game. Everything is eerily silent. In this game that seems like it's supposed to be appealing to young kids and stuff, the mechanics of the game, the jumping and all of that, just are not very fun. There's not really a heck of a lot going on here that would entice you to play it, especially on a game system that's the home of Mario. This is where you go to for good platformers. Why would you play one that's this terrible? Even though it's super inexpensive, I want to say I think it's like $5 or something. That's $5 that you'd be much better off putting toward a better game.
Next up is Falling Elevator Hyper Casual Demolish Escape Survival Game.
This was the Patreon patron voted budget game for this month. I didn't realize when I put this up for the vote, this is a terrible asset flip. This game was sold exactly as is on the Unity asset store, and whoever put this game out just slapped this game on the eShop without making any changes to it, and they're like, give me money. I deserve money for doing this. And the worst part of it, the most embarrassing part of this is, on the Unity store, this game advertises that it has a level builder so that whoever buys the asset can create their own custom levels for the game. They didn't even bother doing that. The 50 levels that are in this game, I think it's 50 anyway, they're the exact same levels that are in the asset as purchased on the store. And it's like, they didn't change a single thing. Even the original title of the game that was on the asset store, they didn't bother changing it in the game when they changed the title when they put it on the eShop. It is an embarrassment. And even on top of that, the game is so simple, it's just boring. You are pressing a single button to halt the fall of an elevator so that it can get past obstacles. And it's really just a timing-based thing. And it goes from being super, super easy to ridiculously difficult. And the only change in that is if you have two obstacles that are right next to each other, then it becomes really difficult to time it to get through it. But other than that, it's just super easy, and there's so many problems I can point to with this game. Like, when you complete a level, you'll never be going back to that level unless you delete your save. There's no level select or anything like that. I do not think that asset flips are necessarily a bad thing. I think that if you take a Unity store asset, and if that asset was good to begin with, you can kind of get away with it. It's still really lazy and definitely not something I want to encourage. But in this case, the asset itself was really something that it's like, okay, you need to actually work on this because as it is, this is not good. And they were like, nah, I'm good. Release it as is. Give me money. Do not give them money for this. Do not buy this game.
Hentai, Make Love Not War, and Hentai Uni, which both got Ds.
I listed these both in the same entry because they're both pretty much the same game, just with a different theme. One is just kind of standard anime-esque girls, and one is anime-esque girls with we're wearing military gear and we have guns and stuff theme. This is a hentai game, as the titles clearly make evident. It has nudity and sexual content, that kind of thing. And I will give my standard spiel here. I do not necessarily hate games that have TNA. I do not necessarily like games that have TNA. As long as it makes sense for the game, and as long as the game itself is good, fine. There have actually been a few games, very few games, that have been kind of hentai or ecchi games that I've actually found to be good. These are not among them. These games are extremely, extremely, extremely simple puzzle games, like tile swap games where you're just trying to put the picture together, to the point where if it wasn't for the kind of content in the game, the kind of pictures in the game, this is something that you would give to a very young child to play. So the gameplay is not going to interest you. The artwork is okay, I guess, but then that raises a question: if really your interest in this game is to just look at sexy images of girls in undress, why not just hop online? You have 1,000,001 choices for that. I just don't see the point to this. It's not that I hate it for having, boobs and stuff. I don't know why you would even play it if really what you want is to see the hot stuff. You have tons and tons of stuff you can access online. This game is just pointless. These games, rather, are just pointless because there's 2 of them. Although I'm sure there's more of them that I just haven't reviewed yet. But these are the 2 that I've reviewed, and they're both a waste. Don't bother with them.
Barry the Bunny, which got a D+.
I really wanted to like Barry the Bunny because the presentation in this game is actually kind of charming. It has a retro pixel art style. It's got a kind of a challenging platformer gameplay to it, which runs counter to that art style, but isn't necessarily a bad thing. I can enjoy a challenging platformer. The problem with this one is that the controls are just so fiddly, and they fail you at the worst times. I would go to make a jump over a endless chasm, and the game wouldn't register my button press for the jump. Whenever you're around a ladder in this game, the controls become all kinds of wonky, and be prepared for it to mess you up. And I feel like if they had just worked on the controls a bit more and fixed these problems, this could have been a C-level or even a B-level game. There's a lot of potential for this one, but with the busted controls, it is just not worth it. Again, especially on the Nintendo Switch, which is known for having tons of great platformers.
All right. You want to move on to other noteworthy reviews?
Okay, you're taking this in whatever order you want to. Let's
yes,
go.
I am. All right.
Sure. We only have one game that fits into that category, but it is noteworthy.
Sherlock Holmes: The Awakened.
This game I received as a review code from the kind folks at Frogwares. Thank you again, Frogwares. And this is a remake of a classic PC detective game. The basic idea being that you are pitting the famous fictional detective Sherlock Holmes against the Lovecraftian nightmare Cthulhu. Well, technically, you're pitting him against cult members who are committing murders to try and resurrect their old one god, that whole thing. I really like the story and the characters in this. I think there's so much potential for these. I think that they do a good job building up the atmosphere. And I like the idea that if you kind of put Sherlock Holmes down the wrong road of deduction, he kind of looks like more of a bumbling detective, or, you can have him correctly guessing what's going on. And it does feel like guessing sometimes. There are some very good elements here. The problem is that those good elements are overcomplicated by a lot of different gameplay mechanics and systems that are not very well explained, or at the very least, it's not clear how they all tie into one another. On top of that, the Nintendo Switch version of this game is really buggy, and it has all sorts of performance issues on Nintendo Switch as well. So even if you're interested in a Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu murder mystery type of game, this is probably not the platform to play it on. I really wish I could have given this one a better score because I really liked some of the elements here, but I just couldn't get past all the problems I was having and how messy it all felt to me.
All right, on to the hidden gems.
Mm-hmm.
We have Destropolis, which got a B+.
Destropolis, I really like the simplicity of this game. It is a 2-stick shooter with roguelike elements where you are kind of this geometric shape in a very simple, flat-colored kind of landscape, absolutely surrounded by other geometric shapes that want to kill you. And there's just tons of great action here. The roguelike elements work really well so that each run that you're making through the game kind of progresses a bit differently. Just really all-around good action game. I definitely recommend it.
All right. Next up is Desitopia, which got a B+ as well.
Desitopia is kind of a retro style old school shmup. And it does some really interesting things with its gameplay where your ship has 4 weapons in each of the 4 different directions, and each of them works differently. And using that, you need to kind of account for how differently these weapons work while you are fending off enemies from all 4 directions. And it kind of keeps you on your toes. And on top of that, as you progress through the game, you will get the opportunity to upgrade each of these weapons individually. So it kind of has you choosing, well, the weapon I have up here is really weak. Do I make that better so it's not so useless? Or do I improve the one that's already good to make it even better? So those kinds of options really help to make this a fun game that stands out. I really like the retro art style. Not everything experimental that this game tries works out great, but it tries enough different things that it sets it apart and makes it a really unique and fun entry in the genre.
Bit.trip collection, a B+.
I think it's usually just referred to as Bit Trip.
Oh.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's weird punctuation.
That is how it is written out, yes. So, I previously reviewed all of the games in this collection. It's a collection that includes 6 games. Those games are Runner, Fate, and Void, which I thought were very good, and Beat, Flux, and Core, which I'm kind of more mixed on. But out of, the 6 games, 3 of them I really liked. And the thing is even if you're only really interested in the better half of this collection, at $10, it is an absolute steal. You are much better going for this collection as a whole than you are just buying 3 of the 6 games here. It is that good of a deal. And I've had it pointed out to me, well, what if they go on sale? Well, the collection goes on sale too. Either way, you're going to be better off getting this collection. Good games, and they all fit together as kind of unique and interesting, and as a part of a greater story of sorts. It's a bit abstract, but yeah.
Gunborg, Dark Matters, B+.
Here we have an action platformer that has 2-stick shooter elements, and really it's just an all-around solid entry in the genre. It has some really good level design, some good variety in the weaponry that you can pick up, some good moment-to-moment gameplay. Just, all around excellent game.
Grid, retro-enhanced, B.
Grid, I was really surprised by. I hadn't really heard anything about this game. And so the aesthetic for Grid reminded me of a music rhythm game by the name of Thumper, which had these kind of abstract, dark visuals. Grid is not a music rhythm game. It's an on-rail shooter kind of closer to something like Star Fox, but it has a similar aesthetic, and it's going for you are a hacker in a sort of visualized version of what it's like to hack a computer system or something. I mean, maybe a silly premise, but it works well enough, and it has some really strong minute-to-minute gameplay. It's very simple, but it works well within that simplicity. And it has all sorts of variety for the things that you're doing. One moment you'll be following a specific path down a corridor, and the next you'll be taking on a boss. The next you'll be dodging gates that are trying to hit you as they spin around. Really, really good gameplay. The only issue that I have is that the camera is all kinds of bad. It doesn't really follow directly behind you. It doesn't really stay in place, and it kind of makes it difficult to see where you are in relation to things, where you're aiming. The gameplay is still good despite this. I just feel like if they had fixed this camera, this could have been an even better game.
Now we have the best games.
Yes.
Oh, you finally got around to playing Splatoon 3.
I did. This game came out last year, and Jen knows that I got this game as a Christmas gift, but I've been so busy with doing the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U reviews that I haven't had a chance to play it until just now. And hey, I really like it. It's my top pick for game this month. Granted it came out a year ago, but I played it this month. Having said that, it's a lot like Splatoon 2. It's a lot like Splatoon 2, but with improvements. Like everything around the game feels like it's been slightly improved. You can now practice with your weapons in the game lobby, so you're not just sitting there looking at a loading screen.
Oh, good.
It's easier to get into multiplayer stuff. There's all kinds of little improvements throughout the game. And while it definitely doesn't feel like an essential addition to this series, like I don't feel like we absolutely needed this update to the Splatoon franchise, the fact that it is an improved version of what was already a really excellent game means that this is also a really excellent game. And if you are new to the Splatoon franchise, this is as good a time as any to get started with it. It is a really fun game premise. This kind of third-person shooter, which is team-based, but you're not necessarily trying just to take out the enemies. You're trying to cover the entire arena in your color of ink. And it's still unique to this day. There's nothing else quite like it aside from, of course, the previous games in the series. In any case, excellent game.
Next up is Remnants of Nazith.
Remnants of Nazith is a platformer with a main gimmick that centers around a use of a grappling hook. But you combine that with double jumps and the physics of the game, the momentum, and it just makes moving around in this game feel like an absolute joy. And I feel like also this game is going to be a speedrunner's dream because it feels like there's all kinds of things you could do to shave off time in each level's run. It's challenging, but not too challenging. The controls are great. Yeah, this is just an excellent all-around platformer.
Assassin's Creed Anniversary Edition Mega Bundle.
I reviewed a lot of compilations and collections this month. I had a whole week where it was, a compilation collection week. And out of all of the compilations that I reviewed this month, this was the best. And this is an expensive compilation. It costs $100, but you're getting a lot of value for that money. To give you an idea, buying this collection, or buying the individual parts of this collection on their own would set you back $150. So you're saving a good chunk of cash getting this instead of those individual games. And to give you an idea, this collection contains Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, I'm going to stop saying Assassin's Creed, it's just repetitive. Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, 3, Liberation, 4 Black Flag, Freedom Cry, and Rogue. There's a lot of Assassin's Creed games in this collection. It's basically everything up until Rogue, with the exception of the original Assassin's Creed. These are all stealth-based action RPGs with a lot of exploration. Most of them have open world elements. And I still think to this day that the highlight of all of these games is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And if you are just looking to start this series, I think that's still the best one to go for. But if you want to get everything in this series on Nintendo Switch, this collection is definitely going to save you some money. And they're pretty much all good games. I say all. Assassin's Creed 3 was kind of iffy and the port wasn't great, but it was still fun in its own right. But for the most part, these are all excellent games, well worth playing. Yeah.
Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection.
This is the patron-voted game for this last month, and it just came out not too long ago. This game contains Mega Man Battle Network 1 through 6, as well as each of the games, starting with 3, had a Pokemon-style counterpart that was released at the same time. So technically you could say that this collection has 10 games, but really it's only 6. These were all games that were originally released on the Game Boy Advance, and for the most part they're presented as they originally were, although there have been a few slight additions, like they've improved the text so it's easier to read on a higher definition screen. They have replaced a lot of the features that required you to link up with things, and instead you can just download it directly in the menus. And I would say that all of these games are really excellent and fun to play. They're fairly unique. It's a combination of like an action RPG and a card RPG, and it does all of those elements well. The biggest problem I would say this collection has is that all 6 of these games are very similar to one another, and they don't do enough to fix the problems that the first game had. And they're still very fun to play, still overall great games. It's just, I would have liked to have seen a bit more done with the core formula here than what they do.
All right, so some housekeeping. So Pokemon Stadium came out on Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack Nintendo 64 release for April 2023. I loved this game.
See,
I loved this game.
I feel like on Nintendo Switch, it's kind of pointless because a large part of the reason to play this game was slapping your Game Boy game into the expansion pack and being able to see your own personal Pokemon in 3D fighting your friend's Pokemon.
Ah, fair.
That was such a great part of this game, and you cannot do it in this because there is no Game Boy game that you can connect to your Nintendo Switch. It doesn't connect to Pokemon Home. It doesn't connect to Pokemon Sword and Shield or any of the other games. And maybe that would have been too much to ask from them, but if that's the case, why would they even bother with this?
Probably something to release, you know?
There are tons of other Nintendo 64 games they could have released instead. And it's like, without that, you're stuck fighting with the quote-unquote rented Pokemon, which is just a selection of a bunch of Pokemon that you didn't get to raise yourself. You didn't get to choose their special moves or anything. You're just stuck with what's in the game. And technically, there are a bunch of mini games in this as well. Personally, I found almost all of them to not be very good mini games.
Oh.
Yeah, I just felt like this was a pointless release, and I would have rather that they released something else if they couldn't go the full distance to actually bring us, the ability to transfer Pokemon from other games into this one.
All right, so we have several games that came out for the Sega Genesis in April of 2023. We have Flicky, Kid Chameleon, Street Fighter II Special Champion Edition, and Pulseman.
With the exception of Pulseman, all of these games were previously available on other compilations and stuff on the Nintendo Switch. Both Flicky and Kid Chameleon were in the Sega Genesis Classics collection. And while technically Street Fighter II Special Champion Edition is not previously on Nintendo Switch, there's 1,000,001 other Street Fighter games or different versions of Street Fighter that are on Nintendo Switch, including multiple better ones. I feel like it's really strange if you're going to pick a version of Street Fighter II to put on Nintendo Switch Online's apps, that you would pick the Genesis version because the sound is not very good. On top of that, there are 2 out of the 3 versions that were released to Super Nintendo were better than this. There was Street Fighter II Turbo, which had more options and more moves for its characters. And then there was Super Street Fighter II, which had 4 more characters to play. Now, this is still a good game. I mean, it's still Street Fighter II. So if you, for some reason, do not have this somewhere else on your Nintendo Switch, well, I'd be surprised that you're even interested in Street Fighter at that point. But if you don't, this is still worth playing. It's just less than ideal, and I don't feel like it's a huge draw. The one game out of all 4 of these releases that's actually new is Pulseman, which, as I understand it, was originally released only on the Sega channel, which means it's not a game that most people own in any other form. So that's interesting. But the game itself, I feel, it's okay. It's not great, but it's all right. It's a decent platformer. So overall, while I wouldn't say that this month's releases for Sega Genesis were bad, I don't think that it was a really great month for the app either.
All right. So on the 19th of April, Nintendo had another Indie World showcase, and I absolutely love these because you find little hidden gems.
Okay.
A few of my favorites is I'm looking forward to Minako's Night Market.
Okay. Yeah, that one was announced a long time ago.
I've heard.
But it's been kind of in development hell, I think. And so it's nice to see it finally has a release date coming up.
It looks adorable. And if you love cats, you're going to love this game.
Yeah, a lot of cat games in this Direct.
Lots of them. Like Quilts and Cats of Calico.
You know, I like the look of this game, and I do like board games, so I'm really curious to try this one. I never actually played the board game this is based on. It's just called Calico. So it'll be interesting to play this when I get the chance to get my hands on it.
I love the aesthetics of that game. I'm not so sure if it's interesting enough to keep my attention, but we'll see. I played My Time at Portia quite a lot, and I'm so happy to hear that My Time at Sandrock, which is the sequel, is coming out. I haven't played it yet, though.
So this one was announced a while ago, and I'm glad to see that we have a release window for it. I hope that it doesn't have the same performance issues that My Time at Portia had on Nintendo Switch.
Oh, I heard about that.
It was a really good game, but having the game pause for a moment every time you open a menu in a game where you're opening menus all the time. It's like a farming sim. So of course you're going to be in menus all the time. If they have a similar problem in this one, I really have to wonder what's going on there. Hopefully they have addressed this in the sequel.
Plate Up, which I tried the demo on PC, it felt a little bit clunky, I think because it was with PC controllers and not an actual gamepad controller. I would love to play that with you when it comes out, and I would be open to trying it with other people as well.
You know, when I reviewed the Overcooked games, I gave them a very good score, but a part of that is I understand this has massive appeal. It's something that pretty much anyone can pick up and play. In the time since, if I'm perfectly honest, I've gotten kind of tired of the Overcooked games. But seeing this one, it actually piques my interest a bit because I'm really curious to see how the progression in the game works. You know, they talk about it having roguelike elements. They talk about you being able to change around your own restaurant so you can change the layout. And I'm like, all of this sounds really interesting and fun to me, like actually being able to customize your own restaurant on the fly. Yeah, definitely looking forward to this one.
I am also looking forward to A Rift of the Necrodancer.
Really? I didn't know you were a music rhythm person.
I am, and lately I've been looking at DDR videos of people who, you know, have their own customized DDR mats, and I'm like, I really want to get back into this.
Rift of the Necrodancer was actually one of my highlights in this Direct as well.
I'm not surprised.
I love the earlier Necrodancer games, and this looks like it plays nothing like those, but it's coming from the same people, so I'm definitely curious to see what they do with a different style of music rhythm game. This one looks like it combines, like, it's half sort of kind of Guitar Hero, and it's half sort of kind of Rhythm Heaven. And those are both really fun formulas. And yeah, I can't wait to give this one a try. It looks really fun.
Okay. I don't have anything else to say about the showcase.
Really?
No.
Well, I had a bit more to say about a bunch of these. Actually, since we kind of started off going through all of the stuff at the very beginning of the showcase, I'll just run through some of these. They had a bunch of DLC that they announced. DLC for A Little to the Left, Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, and Cult of the Lamb. And I will say I didn't like A Little to the Left or Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon anywhere near as much as I wanted to. I'm glad that fans of those games are getting more of it to play. I've heard such good things about Cult of the Lamb, but
So
I haven't.
have I.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to play it
Same.
yet. But it looks fun, and I'm glad to hear it's getting even more good stuff. Animal Well looked interesting.
It's not my cup of tea, but it does look like it was given a lot of love.
Crime O'Clock, I don't really have a good feel for how that's supposed to play. So
I'm curious to try that out, depending on how much it costs.
All right. And then we started getting announcements for all kinds of fun sequels to great games. First of all, we have the announcement of Teslagrad 2. And the original Teslagrad was a really great, I don't want to call it a Metroidvania because it was fairly linear, but it was a challenging platformer, like really tough, but really fun. It had some really interesting physics-based mechanics. And the sequel looks just as good. And they are also re-releasing the original Teslagrad with a kind of an HD remastered update. And I'm a little frustrated with them because it looks like on other platforms, specifically on Steam, you got a discount on the update to the game if you own the original. And it doesn't look like they're doing that on Switch. So I will probably get both of these games eventually, but they're not on sale at the moment, so I haven't gotten them yet. But they both look really excellent. Then, after that, we got the announcement of Shadows Over Loathing. And this was a huge surprise to me, but I'm super thrilled to see it because West of Loathing was a hilarious, it's one of the funniest games I've played in recent years. Hilarious RPG. And I think switching to a different setting is a good idea. It gives them a chance to have all kinds of fun parodies of a completely different genre. I'm totally interested in playing this one. And it's out now, and I just haven't gotten it yet because, again, waiting for sales because I only have so much money. Then, after that, we got the announcement of Blasphemous 2 coming to Nintendo Switch. And again, sequel to a really great game. This was kind of a combination of a Metroidvania-style game and a Souls-like game where it's got really difficult but rewarding combat. We got the announcement of a release date for Oxenfree 2, which, again, the original game was excellent. The sequel looks interesting. They're going for something slightly different where the main characters from the first game are now having to contend with this cult that's opening these interdimensional rifts. Then we got a sizzle reel. And the sizzle reel contained Paper Trail, which looks interesting, but I don't know what it plays like, so I couldn't say. Little Kitty Big City, another one of those cat games, which I don't know. I wonder if this is kind of going to be like Untitled Goose Game. It looks like you're kind of messing with people as a cat. Chants of Sennaar, which I have no idea what that plays like, so I don't know. Brotato, which reminds me a lot of Vampire Survivors, and I really want Vampire Survivors to come out on Switch. It seems like it would be a good fit for Switch, and everyone was raving about it last year. Well, we still don't have any kind of announcement along those lines, so maybe Brotato will fill the gap, I guess. Escape Academy, the Complete Edition, another one I know nothing about, but it could be good. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. I briefly played, I think, the first Five Nights at Freddy game, and it didn't latch on to me, but I know it's become this huge cultural phenomenon. I think they're even making a movie based on it now. And I don't know. Maybe I'll eventually review this one and the rest of the games in the franchise, but it's not my cup of tea. And the final game in the sizzle reel was Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which looks like an off-brand Jet Set Radio, which is probably partly because some of the people behind Jet Set Radio are making this game. And we got a release date for this finally. This is coming out on August 18th of this year. And that was the end of this showcase, which was kind of odd to me because usually for these, they have a sizzle reel at the end and then they have one big final announcement. They didn't do that.
It's possible that they just didn't have one.
See, that's just it though. I feel like if they had reorganized this and put Blasphemous 2 at the very end. That would have been a good way to end the showcase. Or if they put Rift of the Necrodancer at the end, that would have been a really cool way to end this.
I suppose. I'm not too torn up about it, though.
I'm not torn up about it. I thought there were some very good announcements here. It just wasn't anything. It kind of felt like, oh, I guess that's the end. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk to you about a particular movie that came out maybe about a month ago. You might have heard about it, I think.
Well, about 3 weeks ago, as of this recording, I think it is.
Yeah. What movie do you think it is?
Oh, maybe the biggest grossing animated film of all time.
You mean the Super Mario's brother movie?
What do you mean, you mean? You're the one who started this. You mean.
So,
yeah,
yes,
so...
me and Jake and, family and friends, we all went out to see it opening weekend, I think.
I think so. It was shortly after it came out, yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. It's not my top favorite animated video game movies.
I would be surprised if this is the favorite animated movie of anyone. Okay, my personal opinion is, it's fine. It's not bad. It's not the disaster that people feared. It's not the live-action Super Mario Brothers movie, which was really bad. The thing that I've heard people say about it, and I suppose this is probably about right, is that it plays it very safe. It's, hey, you remember all that stuff from the video games that you loved? Here's that.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people were concerned about the voice cast, and
I thought the voice cast was very good.
I thought the voice cast was mostly fine. I thought Chris Pratt as Mario was fine. I thought that they did a decent enough job explaining why he doesn't sound like Mario from the games. It was a cute little way to reference it that they have early into the film.
Ah, right. Won't spoil it.
I thought Charlie Day as Luigi was excellent. In fact, maybe one of the best cast voices in the film.
I thought Jack Black did a great Bowser. There were moments, though, where it just felt like it was Jack Black wearing a Bowser costume.
I felt that with both Jack Black as Bowser and Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong.
Yes.
I felt like they did a decent enough job in the roles, but there were definitely times when it became clear that this wasn't Jack Black as Bowser. This was Jack Black wearing a Bowser suit, which he literally does in the music video for this film. And Seth Rogen wearing a Donkey Kong suit. You even have the classic Seth Rogen laugh.
Oh, wow.
And, of course, Jack Black has to belt out a tune in this movie. And a lot of people are saying it's like the highlight of the movie. And I will definitely say it is... It is the one of the bigger laughs in the movie is the song that Jack Black plays as Bowser in this movie.
I thought it was very comedic. I don't think Bowser himself would actually do something like that, but
maybe
it kind of fit. I'm not too torn up about it.
No, it's funny enough. So I thought Anya Taylor-Joy did a perfectly fine job as Peach.
Was that? I don't remember who the actress was for Peaches.
Well, her name is Peach. The song is called Peaches.
Oh, okay.
I think Keegan-Michael Key did a surprisingly good job as Toad. I mean, they pitched up his voice, so he's not recognizable as Keegan-Michael Key. Really, the one voice in the whole movie that I just did not care for, I'm like, they really needed to pick someone else for him, was Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong didn't work, I think.
I did not. Okay, so I don't know much about Cranky Kong.
I'm not sure if he's ever actually been voiced in a game, but he's had text that has, had his dialogue, and he sounds really cantankerous and old and actually cranky. And this version of the character didn't strike me as that. He's kind of
sassy, a little.
Yes, he's more sassy than cranky in this movie.
He's a little too vibrant, I think.
Yes, and I feel like I did not recognize this as that character in the movie. Every other character, I was like, okay, I can kind of see it. They're going for a different take, but that works. Like, yes, Seth Rogen and Jack Black are kind of doing their versions of the character, but it's still recognizable as those characters. Cranky Kong, no, that was a completely different character as far as I was concerned.
But I mean, the movie had so many different references, like surface level references to, like, you really need to know the game to understand why this was put in. Like Blue Shell. Yes. I like, for somebody who's not like really into the game, you'd probably be like, what's going on with this character?
I think how much you enjoy this film is going to largely be based on how many Mario games have you played.
Yes.
And you'll still understand the basic plot of the film, even if you've never played a Mario game before in your life. But I feel like you'll just be looking around at everyone else in the theater enjoying the movie going,
what's so funny?
Yeah, why are these people smiling? It's just a silly, dumb, cartoony movie. And it's definitely not on par with like the average Pixar movie, as an example.
Right.
I would say it's probably not on par with the average DreamWorks movie. When I was looking at and seeing how much money this movie is making, like I said, I think I saw that this is the highest grossing animated film of all time at this point. After a week, it's done stupid big money. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I bet I could think of 100 animated films that I like better than this movie.
Same.
And I actually thought about it in my head and started counting. And yes, I was able to come up with 100 animated films that I like better than this movie, which I will not bore you with here. But I did still like it. I just don't love it. I don't think it's the best video game movie ever.
Same. I'd rather watch Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, I like Detective Pikachu better. I like the original Mortal Kombat movie better.
Oh, I think I might actually be the same boat as you on that.
I feel like there might be another video game movie I'm forgetting about that I also thought was pretty decent.
I mean, there's so many that have come out recently that are actually better than just okay.
And then we're seeing a lot of TV shows based on video games that are really good. I haven't seen The Last of Us yet, but I've heard really good things. I haven't seen the Witcher series, but I've heard it's fun.
It's pretty good, yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
Jenn and I have both seen Arcane, and even though I'm not a League of Legends fan,
and I'm also not a huge fan of the studio itself,
that series is outstanding.
It is outstanding.
Oh, man,
you gotta pull my teeth to make me say it, but it's good.
It's very good. So it's like we're getting to an age now where I feel like you can actually get good video game movies. I say hesitantly because it's like, okay, Detective Pikachu was good. I don't think it was a truly epic, truly amazing movie, but it was good. And incredibly good TV shows. Mario movie was fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bust. It wasn't a disaster. It was fine. I kind of feel disappointed, though, that it was just fine because Mario is one of the biggest video game franchises ever. It is possibly the most recognizable video game character ever. And for the actual Mario movie to just be kind of fine, it seems like it should be more than that. And it's fine. It isn't. It's an Illumination movie. Hey, you know what? That is a compliment I can give this movie. This is, I think I can say without hesitation, the best movie from Illumination that I've ever seen.
I'd have to disagree.
Oh, do you like Despicable Me better?
I do. I thought it was very cute. And okay, the only reason I like it a bit more than the Super Mario Brothers movie is the storyline was a lot easier to follow and made more sense.
You know what?
Me.
Now I think I have to change my opinion. Maybe it's not the best Illumination movie because I'm thinking back to like, oh wait, there's the Minions movie, and as silly and dumb as that is, actually that was kind of fun.
Yeah. But I mean, they did a good job. The studio did a good job.
You know, it's the best looking movie that Illumination has done.
I can agree to that.
Man, we've lowered our standards quite a bit. Like, hey, it looks kind of good for this one studio. It doesn't look as good as the average Pixar movie, but
I don't want to bash the Super Mario's movie too much. Like, we are being so nitpicky.
We are damning it with faint praise, but it is a good movie. It's just not a great movie.
Okay. All right. So that wraps things up for this month's eShopper Reviews podcast. Again, we want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon for contributing. Patreon donors are the first ones to gain access to these podcasts. And if you're interested in becoming a donor, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. And once again, if you're curious to read any of the reviews or content mentioned in this podcast, you can find it on the eShopper Reviews subreddit at reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. Once again, this has been Jen Ip.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
We'll see you next month, and in the meantime, we both hope you found this content helpful and enjoyable, and I hope you get some good games. Catch you all next time.
Later.